And welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. Normally, I'm your co-host, Mike, but today I am simply your host, Mike. We are going to be talking about all things Big Ten. So that means the bowl games that have happened. That means the playoff games that are upcoming that we're so excited about. And also coaching carousel stuff. So everything is on the table. I'm going to go through all of those topics, but I am happy to discuss anything anybody in the chat wants to talk about. I realize it's an atypical time of day to be podcasting. So we'll see what kind of, it's in the morning. A lot of people are working after Christmas and whatever. So we'll see if we have much of a turnout or not. Regardless, we're going to have a really good time in this podcast because things are going well for the Big Ten during bowl season and the playoff season. And I would just point out right off the bat that the Big Ten has not lost a postseason game. Full stop. 5-0. 5-0, including playoffs and bowl games. The Big Ten is 5-0. I believe last I checked, the SEC is 2-4. And one of those wins was two SEC teams playing each other. So outside of interconference games, the SEC, I believe, is 1-3. If you take out, the games where they played each other, I believe they're 1-3 and 2-4 overall. So not great, Bob. Reekin Raider in the chat says, "Rah, yeah, Reekin, good to see you, man. Hey, how are you feeling about Michigan and the Kyle Whittingham? We should talk. Let's talk coaching carousel right off the bat, since we have Reekin in the chat right here. Let's talk about Michigan and Kyle Whittingham. Kyle Whittingham has been hired from, he stepped down as the coach at Utah. He didn't retire. A lot of people thought he was going to retire. And he said, no, I'm not retiring. I'm stepping away. And the Michigan job kind of fell into his lap. Michigan didn't get their first, choices that they wanted. The Sharon Moore thing happened really late in the cycle. So it was hard for them to do a lot of work. But I got to give Michigan a lot of credit here. Kyle Whittingham is one of the 10 best coaches in college football, full stop. No question about it. And has been for 20 years. So I think what you're getting is a really high floor pick here for Michigan. Can he win a national title? I'm excited to find out. I don't see why he couldn't make a run. What he did at Utah, overachieving all those years, is phenomenal. So now that he's at Michigan, where he's going to have more resources, it's going to be really interesting to see what Kyle Whittingham can do. Max in the chat, friend of the pod, Max. Good to see you, Max. Says Big Ten is guaranteed 2 more losses at least. Well, yes, in a playoff system, some of the Big Ten teams will lose eventually. But right now, the Big Ten is undefeated. Right now, the Big Ten is taking care of everything in bowl season, while the SEC has struggled. And after, we all knew after the last 2 years that the Big Ten had ascended to become the best conference in college football. We saw that this year in the out of conference play. But the media just kept saying, oh, no, it's the SEC. The SEC's deeper. They're like, well, the Big Ten might have the best teams, but the SEC's deeper. Well, the SEC isn't deeper. That 8-4 Mizzou squad that was ranked all year that you all counted as a good win lost to Virginia. And honestly, Virginia should have won by more. Should have won by more. Absolutely. Reekin, I don't know if I can say that on the air, what you just put in the chat, but Reekin made the point that Kyle Whittingham is a very solid coach who perhaps will not have anything like the off-field issues that Sharon Moore has. Kyle Whittingham is a pretty well known to be a family man kind of guy. I don't think you're going to end up with the shenanigans you had under Sharon Moore. And that total, I shouldn't call them shenanigans. It's very serious. What Sharon Moore did was terrible. And he took advantage of his position, and he was rightfully fired for it. And I don't think he'll ever be a head coach in college football again after what he's done. And he shouldn't be. That's not a guy you want leading your young men around, But Kyle Whittingham, won the Pac-12, made the Rose Bowl. I think he won the Rose Bowl once, I want to say. But they're tough every year. They're Kyle Whittingham is a lot like Michigan, what he did at Utah. They play fantastic defense. They're going to run the ball. The only big difference is that Kyle Whittingham usually leans into having a mobile quarterback, whereas Michigan likes pocket passers historically. That said, Bryce Underwood is more of a, is kind of a dual threat kind of guy. So he's he fits right. Having him already on the roster, he is right in Kyle Whittingham's wheelhouse. So having Whittingham and his offensive staff to tutor Bryce Underwood, I think will be really good for Bryce Underwood's development. Provided they can get a couple receivers for him. They don't have a lot on the roster right now. They have Andrew Marsh, who's pretty good, but he was just a freshman, so he could emerge next year. But they probably got to go get a couple guys in the portal who can play receiver and, make a difference. Max says, very big culture change in Ann Arbor. They needed it, though, after 2 straight massive scandals. Max, it's 3 straight scandals for Michigan. So the Sherrone Moore domestic, taking advantage of his position, domestic abuse, we'll call it what it is, scandal. So that's 1. 2 was the sign stealing scandal, stealing all the signs during the game, advanced scouting and all that stuff that was illegal that you're not allowed to do. And 3, they had that staffer who was on staff for like a decade who was looking up, compromising pictures of co-ed athletes from across the country for his own purposes, whatever those were, which I imagine were gross. So not going to say out loud what I think he was doing with all those pictures, but so Michigan's had 3 big scandals. They need a Kyle Whittingham. They need a guy who's going to keep people out of trouble, who's going to have a button down, organization where they don't have any more of this, because Michigan can't afford any more PR hits. They've taken a lot already. So I think Kyle Whittingham was a really smart hire. It's a guy who, he's adjusted with the times. He hasn't. Some coaches got left behind when NIL happened. You look at Dabo Swinney at Clemson. He looks like a fish out of water. Doesn't know what to do now that NIL is a thing. But Kyle Whittingham has adjusted well. Utah did not stop winning when NIL happened. They did not stop. They continued to win. So I think Kyle Whittingham is on board for all the modern stuff, the NIL, the contract negotiations, all that kind of stuff that maybe you would be worried that an older coach would not be cool with. I think Kyle Whittingham has shown that he can do those things. So Kyle Whittingham, fantastic hire at Michigan, and immediately raises the floor. He's a huge coaching upgrade over Sherrone Moore, who was clearly not just was a bad dude off the field, but clearly didn't really know what he was doing on the field totally either. He was not a great coach. He only got that job because he was Harbaugh's right-hand man. And Harbaugh, man, he won a national title, but boy, he left Michigan in a bad position otherwise when he took all the staff members and then left Sherrone Moore to take over, who clearly wasn't up to it, and all that kind of stuff. So Harbaugh, you did get that title, but you took a lot of fallout for it, Michigan, for sure. Max in the chat, anyone can say what they want about Ryan Day, but he runs a tight ship and is a great dude off the field, makes having him as a head coach so much easier. Yeah, man, as somebody, I appreciate the coaches who take care of business and teach young men to be men, because these are guys who are just kids a year ago, and they turn 18 and then you're expected to be a man, and they need a coach who can, most kids need a coach who can guide them through that, when they're away from home and don't have their dad around and, to every day like you do when you're living at home before you go to college. I think that's great. I think it's great what Ryan Day has done. That's one of the reasons I'm proud to cheer for Minnesota and PJ Fleck. PJ Fleck is really good about teaching his players, doing a lot of volunteer work in the community, and also just teaching them to be good people. One thing PJ does, and I bet you it wouldn't surprise me if Ryan Day does this too, is he teaches his players a class in how to date successfully and without being a creep, essentially. Like how to date and be like honest and forthright and not be gross and not be a predator. So I think that's really important that you emphasize those things. And it's true that off the field, the Buckeyes, who used to get in a lot of trouble, in previous regimes under Urban Meyer and whatnot, and Jim Tressel also, they had their share of troublemakers. But yeah, it seems like Ryan Day has done a good job of avoiding the players who are problems. Rican in the chat says Whittingham won't have to directly handle NIL either. The general managers do. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And this now it's become more sophisticated than it was NIL a few years ago. You've got the general managers, you've got all that kind of stuff. The coaches are still doing a lot of scouting, I think. But even that, they're doing less of scouting as the GMs take over more of that role. So, yeah, I think, and he's going to have, Michigan has endless infrastructure. They have fantastic resources. So Kyle Whittingham's going to have everything he needs to win big at Michigan. And I'll be curious to see if he can do it. He gets 2 to 3 years with Bryce Underwood, I got to think that in those 2 to 3 years, Michigan's going to expect a Big Ten title. Michigan is historically the second most successful school in this conference, and they consider themselves the best. Michigan does. They do consider themselves the best. There's no question about that. So, they're going to expect Kyle Whittingham to go out and beat Ryan Day and win the Big Ten. That's the expectation. Max in the chat says part of it with Minnesota and Ohio State is that the head coach involves his wife. I know Nina Day is very involved in both their foundation to get mental health and guiding young men. Yeah, Max, I think you make a really good point. Heather Fleck does PR for the University of Minnesota, so she comes to work with PJ every day and works. I don't think she draws a salary because PJ is making plenty of money for both of them, but she is a professional, PR person, and she does a lot of work for the U in that capacity, as essentially the first lady of Gopher football. And it sounds like Nina Day for the Buckeyes does a lot the same thing. And I think that's really, that's really important. It's good. Coaches, we saw with Sharon Moore, when your life gets messy off the field, it starts to impact what happens on the field. It starts to. It just does. There's a reason why Urban Meyer always was an amazing coach, but he always burned out and had to leave everywhere he ever went. Because he wasn't that greatest dude. He just wasn't. He's not the guy that you want probably at your family gathering, if you're being totally honest. But Ryan Day seems like the opposite of that. Ryan Day seems like a total good family man who would, who cares about his players and all that kind of stuff. So I think that is awesome. What was I gonna say? Another one. Rican says we need Target to drop cash to Minnesota NIL. I agree, Rican. We just got Cub Food. Cub Food just gave Minnesota NIL football NIL a bunch of money. So I'm excited about that. I now only shop at Cub Foods for groceries because they are supporting the U of M like that. So that's what I am doing. Do my little part, buying, and I'm going to call Cub Foods and tell them that that's why I shop here now. Be like, you're doing a solid for Minnesota. As long as you're giving us NIL money, I will shop at Cub Foods. That is my deal with Cub Foods. And I feel that way about, a lot of things. I'd love to see Target drop a bunch, get involved with the Minnesota program. I think it would be beneficial for both parties, but that I digress. That's a little off the topic. We'll have plenty of time, Rican, in the off season to talk about stuff like that. Right now, we should talk about actual football. And before we get to any games, we talked about Kyle Whittingham. So let's talk about, I want to also mention that Northwestern has hired Chip Kelly as their next offensive coordinator. So Chip Kelly was the Buckeyes offensive coordinator during their national title run. Before that, had a ton of success when he was the head coach at Oregon, went to the NFL, didn't go as well, came back to college at UCLA. It went okay, and then he kind of quit on the program, to be fair. But now he clearly just wants to coach. He wants to be a coordinator, and the Northwestern Wildcats have hired Chip Kelly as their coordinator. And you know what? Here's the thing. In the new Big Ten, we always say there's no easy outs. Everybody's playing to win. Everybody's playing to win. Northwestern's playing to win. They're going to get a high-priced, fantastic coordinator, see what he can do. I know some people aren't as high on Chip Kelly as they once were, but he has been really successful at the collegiate level, putting together offenses. So it seems like a good hire as far as that goes. Certainly better than Zach Lujan, who they had before, who probably will end up back in the FCS because he couldn't, he wasn't ready. He's a young coach. He could still get there, but he wasn't ready to hack it at this level, clearly. All right, Max in the chat. I'll talk about that school up north. He means Michigan now. Whittingham is a great coach, unfortunately, but we'll see. The answer of, I guess I do now, when asked if he hates Ohio State, isn't a great start, in my opinion. I thought that was kind of funny. So they asked Kyle Whittingham, does he hate does he hate Ohio State at his opening press conference? And he said, well, I do now. And what else do you want him to say? Yeah, he was at Utah for 20 plus years. He didn't think about Ohio State. He didn't care about Ohio State. He didn't really play Ohio State. So why would he worry about the Buckeyes? So I totally get that. Yeah. It's a new thing. I'm sure by the time they get to the offseason, into offseason conditioning and stuff, he'll be like, I hate Ohio. We're going to take those jerks down, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to happen. I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think, Whittingham is a big competitor. He wants to win. He always has. So I'm not worried about it. Rican says, can we talk about Lane Kiffin? Yeah, we can talk about Lane Kiffin. What do you want to talk about? Lane Kiffin, who led Ole Miss to the playoff, but is not coaching them because he is now the head coach for the LSU Tigers. He wanted to continue coaching in the playoff. Ole Miss said, thanks, but no thanks. We'll do it without you if you're going to leave. And that's, I get that. It's sad for me because I think Ole Miss has a better chance of winning more games if they have Lane Kiffin, because he's such a great offensive mind and he's good at scheming things up and finding weaknesses in the defense. And we've seen that over the years, the way he can really figure out what you're doing and how that, and how to take advantage of it, how to exploit it. So, yeah, but to go to LSU, man, you either win a national title or you get fired. Or in Ed Orgeron's case, you win a national title and then you get fired 18 months later. So Lane Kiffin's going to a place where he will be on the hot seat almost from game one. And he knows that going in. He knows the expectation. Anything less than an SEC title and a national championship appearance is not going to be good enough for LSU fans. It's just not. So Lane Kiffin's taking a big risk here. He had a comfy in Oxford. He probably could have coached at Ole Miss forever. But he obviously thinks that he has a better chance to win a national title at LSU than he does at Ole Miss. I think he wants to not just be a great coach. I think he wants to be considered the greatest coach in college football. And he knows the only way he'll be widely considered the greatest coach in college football is if he wins a national title. Now, I don't go by those metrics. You ask me, I think Curt Cignetti's the greatest coach in college football, and I don't care if he never wins a national title. He might win one. He might win one this year. But even if they don't, I think doing what he's done at Indiana in such a short time makes him the best coach in the country. But the college football media is going to say the best coach is the guy who's winning national titles. That's just the way the college football media is. So I get Lane, he's just got big ambitions, man. And he thinks that LSU is his chance to build. I think Lane thinks that he can do at LSU what Nick Saban did at Alabama. I don't know if Lane can do that, but he believes he can do that. And maybe, we'll see. I think it's harder now in the NIL world. There's a lot more parity. You can't just stockpile talent the way you could before when you were paying the players under the table and other schools weren't paying the players at all. Like, that's all over. You can't do that anymore. Do I think Lane Kiffin will make it happen? Yeah, I do. I think Lane Kiffin's a great coach. I think he's as good as it gets offensively. LSU's defense almost recruits itself. You just need a decent defensive coordinator, and I'm sure Lane will be able to find one to go coach at LSU. I'm not sure if he's hired one yet, but I'm sure he'll find a good one. Yeah, I think Lane's going to be tough, man. I think he could win the SEC. Maybe not this year. Next year. Maybe not next year. Maybe not right away. But I think in the next 2 to 3 years, we will see Lane Kiffin hoist the trophy, win the SEC title. Will he win a national title? I don't know. That's harder to predict. But I think he will win the SEC sooner than later. I do believe that. Max and Rican both think that it was a great hire for Northwestern to get Chip Kelly. Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, the only thing about Chip Kelly is that in the NFL, when he doesn't have a talent advantage, his offenses have not been as good. And now he's going to be at a school in Northwestern where his players are slower than the players in the other team, almost always. Not in every conference game. They will be the slower team. Well, unless they play Purdue. Purdue's pretty slow at this point. But Northwestern will be the least athletic, team in the conference they play. But that was true this year, and they won a bunch of games. They won 7 games. Not a bunch, but, they won enough to make it to a bowl game, win the bowl, whatever. They had a couple upsets along the way, beat Penn State, that kind of thing. Kind of unexpectedly came from behind to beat Minnesota in a really ugly game for the Gophers. And, they're tough. They're scrappy. David Braun's a really good coach. So I think that it's a good hire for Northwestern. Will it work out? I don't know. It's can Chip Kelly score with the athletes Northwestern has? I don't know. I think he'll do better than Lujan did, though. I think that's true for sure. I think he's a much better coach, so it's a big upgrade. So you should get better results just from having better coaching to some extent. Now, is that a big difference or is that a marginal difference? I don't know. I think it depends who the next quarterback is. Preston Stone is not it. Apparently, the rumor is Northwestern is looking at Billy Edwards, which Man, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me a third time, it's a lot of shame. It's a lot of shame. So I don't know why. I hope that Northwestern is going somewhere else besides. I just don't believe in Billy Edwards at all. I don't think he's a good player. I didn't think he was a good player when he was at Maryland. I didn't think he was a good player when he was even at Wisconsin. Even when he was healthy, I didn't think he was. I mean, which he wasn't healthy very much. But when he was healthy, I didn't think he was very good. So, it is what it is. Nittany Nation Mish in the chat. Nice to see you, man. He says, is it a failure if Kiffin wins double-digit games for 5 years and loses once in the Natty and gets fired? Yeah, if you don't win a national title at LSU, you failed. If you don't win an SEC title at LSU, you failed. Full stop. It's not a school where you can say, oh, we won 10 games and that was good. He just won 11 games at Ole Miss. So if he can't recreate that at LSU, then it's a failure and he's going to be fired in like 3 years. Like 3 years. Like he's got that long to make a run. I'm not saying he has to win the Natty in 3 years, but he has to be close. He has to be close. He has to win the SEC. He has to get close to winning a Natty. I think that would be interesting. Max in the chat's got some rumors. Love rumors, Max. The rumblings I'm hearing is that Day has continued to his hire a former head coach to be a coordinator trend for the open OC position. That or Garrett Riley is the rumor as of now. A former head coach, huh? Whom would that be? That's interesting to me. I don't know. I thought that Day was going to hire JT Barrett as his next offensive coordinator. He's Mr. Ohio State. He's had a lot of success as an assistant coach. I thought that this was JT Barrett time. Garrett Riley would be interesting because he failed so badly at Clemson, but like, was that his fault or is that Dabo Swinney's fault? Like, I think there's enough blame to go around at Clemson. I don't know. I wouldn't take Garrett Riley right now because I'd be a little worried. I'm worried that Cade Klubnik never developed under Garrett Riley. Cade Klubnik never got any better. He looked great as a freshman, and he kind of was just that same player for 3 more years. You didn't see that march of progress to just get, to get a little better each year. You didn't see that. So yeah. I think that, sorry. I just dropped something in the chat by accident. You can ignore that, people. I just pushed the wrong button. Don't worry about it. Max says the Music City Bowl has Nashville in both end zones as they always do, but for Illinois, the ILL is in a different color. Very cool. Very cool. I like that for the Illinois end zone. Yeah, I don't love the Nashville in the end zone, but I like having the ILL, for Illinois. I like representing the teams that make it to bowl games and not just the bowl game itself. But, that's nitpicking. I digress with that. It is what it is. And we should talk about, so we talked about coaching. Oh, also, Pat Fitzgerald is putting together a heck of a staff at Michigan State. He just hired LeVar Woods, the Iowa special teams coordinator, to be the special teams coordinator and assistant head coach. Now, Iowa infamously has the best special teams in the country every year. Every year. They have a great kicker. They have a punter who's somehow even better than the kicker. And then they are fantastic in the return game. They're really good covering kicks. I mean, Iowa's always amazing on special teams. And that's how you lose to them a lot of the time, because you'll be better on offense or defense, but they'll make a play on special teams and you're done. So losing LeVar Woods to Michigan State is a huge loss for Iowa. And it's a huge coup for Sparty and Pat Fitzgerald. I thought he was waiting to be named head coach when Ferentz retires. I did not think you could get LeVar Woods to leave Iowa City. I thought he was locked in with Ferentz. So for Pat Fitzgerald to not just, remember, Ferentz let Pat Fitzgerald hang around the program when he was unemployed. You think he regrets that now? Do you think he regrets that now? I think he does. He let Pat Fitzgerald come close to the facility, and now Pat Fitzgerald stole his second, one of his 2 best assistant coaches. One of his 2 best coaches. Pat Fitzgerald just walked out the door and took him. So, luckily Ferentz still has Phil Parker coordinating the defense. But to steal LeVar Woods is a big blow to Iowa. It's a big blow. I don't know if it's going to show up. Ferentz is amazing on special teams as well. He might hire another guy who's a really good coordinator, but I don't know if Iowa's going to lead the nation in special teams every year again. I don't know if that's going to happen for the next 5 years with LeVar Woods gone. I just don't know that. Max in the chat says Brian Daboll or Joe Moorhead, soon to be former head coach at this rate. Okay, as offensive coordinator, I could see that. I could see Joe Moorhead. Joe Moorhead can conduct a college offense. He really can. I think that's, so I think he would be a good hire. I don't know as much about Brian Daboll. I believe he was at LSU when Joe Burrow was there, I want to say. So he's got, he's shown he can do it at the collegiate level too. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Ohio State goes as an offensive coordinator for next year. No question about it. All right. Rican says, theoretical question here. Does the success Indiana has had put more strain on Fleck? Like, can leadership say he can do it? Why can't you? I think the pressure is on the behind the scenes stuff. Because what Kurt Cignetti didn't just win because he's a great coach. And he is a great coach. I said on this podcast, he's the best coach in college football, full stop. Full stop. But that said, I think what Minnesota needs, I don't know what every other school needs. What Minnesota needs is more money from the Board of Regents for the football program. I don't think that puts more stress on Fleck. I think it puts more stress on the athletic department and the Board of Regents to give Fleck what he needs to succeed. And I am actually about to start in the new year a email and letter writing and calling campaign to the Minnesota Board of Regents to pressure them to fund Gopher football at a championship level, which we just aren't funding it at a championship level right now. And that's the next step. We've done well. We're doing better than some of our peers, but we haven't gotten over the hump the way Indiana has, spending so much money on their assistants and stuff like that. So I don't think the pressure's on Fleck, Reek, and I think the pressure's on our AD and on the Board of Regents via the AD and the president. I think it's up to those people more than Fleck. I think Fleck's doing what he can with the resources he can for the most part. All right, Nittany Nation Mish. It's going to be boom or bust under Fitzgerald at Sparty, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Nittany. I thought it was a crazy hire, honestly, because Fitzgerald's last 4 years at Northwestern were so bad. And as soon as Mike Hankwitz retired as defensive coordinator, Northwestern fell off a cliff. So Pat Fitzgerald has not shown that he can win without Mike Hankwitz. He had Mike Hankwitz his entire tenure until those last few years when he lost. That said, they're spending on players. They're getting a lot of good coaches that they're stealing from other programs. Like, Pat Fitzgerald is doing a good job of assembling a staff. Will it work? I don't know. But if it works, I think it's going to work. I'm with you. I think it's either they're going to do great or it's going to crash and burn and they're going to be awful. Our Michigan fan in the chat, Rican, thinks Sparty's going 1-11. They are not. They're not going 1-11. But Fitz is a great coach. I mean, I'll be surprised. I think Sparty will go at least 6-6 next year, maybe better. We'll see what they end up having, what they end up deciding in the, getting in the portal and stuff like that. But yeah, Sparty, I mean, they're taking it seriously. And that's the thing. Northwestern showed they were taking it seriously by hiring Chip Kelly. Sparty's taking it seriously by, giving Fitzgerald enough money to poach other good assistants off of staff. It's about the behind the scenes alignment sometimes more than it is about the head coach when you look at what the program success is. I truly believe that. But let's talk. When we can continue talking, yeah, Max, Fitz is a great coach. I definitely think, yeah, they'll get to a bowl game. Of course they will. I mean, Fitz, they will do that. I'm sure their defense will improve. Their running game will improve, and they already ran the ball pretty okay this year. And they have Caleb Komalafe coming back. And he's a really good back. He's a really good back. Very solid Big Ten starting running back. So you've got some pieces to work with. You have some pieces to work with for sure. All right. So we previously discussed the Bucked Up LA Bowl in which Washington defeated Boise State 38-10, and also the playoff game where Oregon beat James Madison 51-34. So we won't address those again. But we've had some bowl games since then. So let me talk about those. Max says thoughts on Minnesota's new DC Bobby April the 3rd. So Max, he's not the new DC. He is a new I believe he's like the Rush Ends coach or something like that, and like assistant I think he might be like an assistant head coach kind of thing, potentially. I'm not exactly sure, but he is not the new defensive coordinator. I want Fleck to name a new defensive coordinator. He has not yet. I will say Bobby April, he did really good things at, I want to say Wisconsin was where he was, and he did some good things as a recruiter and developer of talent there. So I know Badger fans were kind of annoyed that we got him, I want to say. At least, unless I'm thinking of somebody else, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yeah. Yeah, he's been all over. No, he's been in the NFL mostly. Interesting. Yeah, been in the NFL mostly, Bobby April. For some reason, I thought he was at Wisconsin, but he was not. That was wrong about that. That was somebody else. I think that was somebody else on our staff. I got him confused with. So it'll be, I think anything Minnesota can get is good as far as having more input. They need. Danny Collins just made things too complicated this year. It was his first year as a coordinator, and he gave the players too much. And they played, at times, they were very confused about their responsibilities because of that. So one of the things Minnesota has to do for next year is streamline. You saw that in the bowl game show up a little bit. They played a little better defensively. And, against Wisconsin, against some of those late games in the year, they played a little better defensively. But there were too many blown coverages and things throughout the year. And so I still think Fleck is going to bring in a different DC to co-DC with Danny Collins. I just don't know who that's going to be yet. Nittany Nation Mish, are you surprised Minnesota's already had 15 players transfer out? I mean, none of those guys are playing, man. None of those guys are playing. Feme was our number 3 running back this year, but we had their first 2 got hurt, so he got to play a lot. But he was going to be our 3rd running back this year, was going to be maybe even further down the depth chart next year because we get the injuries back. Plus, we have a true freshman coming in that the staff is really high on, and Ryan Estrada, who could be the next great superstar Gopher running back. And then Malachi Coleman, he's a freakish athlete, but he only caught a few balls all year. He's just not a guy who was consistent enough for Fleck to put him on the field consistently. And Fleck is big, man. If you don't know the route tree and you can't block, you can't run block, PJ Fleck is not going to put you out there playing wide receiver. You have to be able to run the routes, and you have to be able to block. Or PJ's just not going to give you time. He'll give someone else time who's not as talented as you are if you're not doing the little things. That's really important to Fleck. So I'm not surprised. I think that's a pretty normal number, Nittany Nation. It's we haven't lost, like I said, we haven't lost anyone we tried to keep. So I think that is that is how that goes. But it's good. I think, Bobby April, anytime you can bring in experienced coaches to give your younger, to help mentor your younger assistant coaches, I think that's good. And I think Danny Collins needs mentors right now because he's like 36. It was his first year as a coordinator last year. Like, he's learning on the job. So he's going to need the best possible advice. If Fleck isn't going to replace him, and I thought he should maybe replace him, but if he's not going to replace him, then what he needs is the best possible guys helping him out, helping him to streamline the game plan, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's really important. All right. Let's talk a little bit about these bowl games. So we were just talking about Northwestern, so we'll go right there. In the game above sports bowl, we had the Northwestern Wildcats 34, the Central Michigan Chippewas 7. There wasn't a lot of offense in this game. The Cats only put up just over 300 yards, and Central Michigan put up like 269. The passing game was okay. The rushing game wasn't there for Northwestern. Surprisingly, they couldn't move the ball and move it at will. They couldn't get Caleb Kolamafe or anybody or Joseph Hyman going the way they wanted to. So I think that was a surprise. But Central Michigan had 4 turnovers. 4. 3 of them led directly to Northwestern touchdowns and were all like inside deep in the Northwestern side of the field. Some of them inside the 20-yard line. So credit to Northwestern. They came out, they played hard, they got it done. Central Michigan imploded a little bit. But Northwestern, they got it done. and they end the year 7-6. And David Braun, man, got them back to having a winning record after last year was such a debacle. So I think it was impressive, on his part to, get some of the wins they got this year over Michigan, over Minnesota, over Penn State, over Minnesota, games that they were not projected to win by any means. I think David Braun's a really good coach. Neither team did very well on third down. Neither team ran the ball well. It was kind of an ugly game that was decided by those turnovers. Northwestern got that 21-point lead, and they kind of just, from there, it was clear that Central Michigan wasn't going to be able to score much against Northwestern because every time they got close, they turned the ball over. So Northwestern, man, credit to them. I think that they got it handed them to a little bit in the form of some of those turnovers, but they forced those turnovers too. So you got to give them credit. I think it was a good campaign for David Braun. And now he's got Chip Kelly coming in as offensive coordinator. So that should help. And it should also help to get a quarterback who's not Preston Stone. Because as good as he looked in a couple games this year, Preston Stone is mostly not very good. Yeah, like in this game, he did okay. 19 for 31, 226, 7.3 yards per attempt, 3 TDs, 0 picks, QBR 59.3. Not amazing, but you'll take it. You'll take it because he didn't throw any picks. He held onto the ball, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I was surprised. Give credit to the Chippewas though. They made it tough on Kolamafe running the ball. I didn't expect that. I thought that Kolamafe was going to rattle off, 125, 150 yards or something against Central Michigan, and he didn't. They weren't. This wasn't a game where they just dominated the line of scrimmage. This was a game where Northwestern made the big plays, all the time when they needed them, and you got to give him credit for that. Griffin Wilde, man, talked about him all year. He's tough to cover. 10 catches, 97 yards, 2 TDs, long of 23. 10 catches, just under 100 yards. He largely was the offense. And, Griffin Wilde is only a junior. He can come back next year. So if they can find another receiver to pair with Griffin Wilde, who can play a little bit, then you could see Northwestern have a much more dynamic offense next year. If they can find another receiver to go with Griffin Wilde. Because right now, Griffin Wilde is about all they have. Everybody else is pretty pedestrian. So they need, but he's a good place to start. He's a legit number one wide receiver in the Big Ten. He's proven he made the jump from the FCS, didn't miss a beat. So got to give him a lot of credit. Give Northwestern credit for getting to a winning record. That's always better to be 7-6 than 6-7. Makes the offseason a little less depressing for sure. Gives you a little bit of hope and some energy, some excitement, that kind of thing. So that's really fun as well. All right, next up we had the Rate Bowl. We had in overtime the Minnesota Golden Gophers 20, the New Mexico Lobos 17. This was an ugly game. The defensives dominated this game on both sides. Drake Lindsey played his worst game of the year, I believe. He still made the game-winning throw in overtime, which was beautiful. Made the game winner when he needed it. Threw a really nice touchdown pass earlier in the game. So he had a couple, he had some really nice plays. But Drake Lindsey played really poorly. And that hurt the Gophers. He was missing guys who were open. And he was not always going through his progressions. He looked like a freshman a little bit. And that's credit to New Mexico. New Mexico had time to game plan for this game, and they gave Drake a lot of looks that I think that made him a little uncomfortable, made it harder for the offense. And then, Minnesota's had, such a mediocre offensive line all year. So, this game was closer than it should have been. New Mexico scored on a kick return. So and they've got a 2-point conversion off of that. So if you take out the kick return, this ends up being a little more in Minnesota's favor, but you can't do that. Special teams count too. And I'm looking at you, Bob Ligashevsky, Minnesota special teams coordinator. You kicked it to the best return guy in the Mountain West, and he burned you. Guy with 4.3 speed. That was a mistake. let's see. Max says Ohio State's going to have some wide receivers leave. Go get one of them. However, it seems like OSU transfer wide receivers never work out. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you leave Ohio State because you couldn't get on the field, that doesn't guarantee you're going to be really good elsewhere. You might just not have been that good to begin with. And at receiver, other positions guys improve more. But like, there's been a lot of studies on this with wide receivers. I've mentioned this before, but a wide receiver, if they don't hit by either their freshman year or their redshirt freshman year, if they don't hit in year 1 or year 2, they generally don't work out anywhere. Even if they transfer, they don't work out. And that's just the way it is. Some guys can it's a combination of having the physical skills, but also having the route running technique. I think there are a lot of guys who have the physical skills, but cannot run precise patterns, precise routes, get out of their breaks efficiently, and do the things you need to separate. Because the DBs are just as good or better athletes than you are at wide receiver. The DBs are often better athletes. They just can't catch the ball, some of them. And so they end up on defense. So it's not enough to be a really good athlete. You have to be a really good route runner. I'm not excited about that. And also, Max, Minnesota apparently is going to spend a bunch of NIL on like one really good receiver. Like they sprayed the board in the past years and got 2 or 3 for cheaper. I guess this year the idea is to get one really good one and kind of go from there. So that'll be interesting to see if Fleck can bring in, you saw Jalen Smith flash as a freshman this year. He had 2 touchdown catches in this game. He's really coming into his own. He's going to be a legit number 2 Big Ten wide receiver next year. Very legit. But you need a number 1. You need a number 1 to come in. Javon Tracy, he has his moments. He's a good player. He's not a number 1 receiver in the Big Ten. He's not. He's not going to be. He's not that good. He doesn't have the athletic upside for that. He's a good player. He runs good routes. He can get open sometimes and do some good stuff. But he's not going to be a superstar like that. Javon Tracy just is not at this point, I don't think, after watching him for a full year. So I don't see that happening. I think you see Minnesota, pony up and try to make offer a guy 7 figures who could come in and be your superstar number 1 wide receiver right away. I think you need to give Drake Lindsey's proven he can do a lot of good things. He just needs more help. He needs more help, both in the offensive line and at wide receiver. And I think that's going to be Minnesota's biggest priorities in the portal are going to be to fix the offensive line and to upgrade, get a probably try to bring in a number 1 wide receiver. I think that's really important. Darius Taylor was great in this game. He was, he had over 100 yards rush, 116 yards rushing and a TD, including the long 38-yard run where it looked like he was caught in the backfield and the defensive player came in unblocked and Darius hit the ground, made a spin move, got to the outside and, went for 38 yards, which that's why you love Darius. He can do stuff like that nobody else can do. That's why the Gophers, no matter how much he gets hurt, the Gophers will never let him go because when he's healthy, he's about as good as it gets. He's really, really special. So just got to keep him healthy. And I think having a better running back rotation next year, hopefully you don't have so many injuries in that room so you can actually split carries and not put so much tread on Darius. I think that's going to be really important as well. So, Minnesota finishes the year 8-5. And, is it the year I wanted them to have? No, it's not. It's not the year I wanted the Gophers to have. But they did some good things. They got better as the year went on. They closed it out with a couple wins late in the year to really make us all feel better. So PJ gets to 8-5 with, I'm going to say, a team that, was not his most talented team. He really struggled. The offensive line just was not up to par this year. And that kind of impacted the rest of the situation, the rest of the offense. So I think they can fix that offense, but we got to give credit to Anthony Smith, the defensive end. Number 0, Agent 0, he goes by on social media. Anthony Smith had, as a defensive end, had 6 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and 2 passes defended. 2 passes he knocked down. I mean, you talk about a game wrecker, man. 6 solo tackles, 4 of them tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and he defended multiple passes. And that was the theme. Minnesota blocked a lot of passes at the line of scrimmage. Carter Menz did the same thing. He had a couple passes defended. So that was, Minnesota was able to get pressure. They were able to push New Mexico around a little bit. And, it came down to the fact that, like I said, if it weren't for that special teams play, New Mexico scored once, essentially all game. Or I guess they got a field goal. So they scored twice. But, or no, I guess they got a couple field goals. Whatever. The point is, they only had 200 yards of offense. They didn't move the ball a bunch. It wasn't like they were going up and down the field or anything. It was a game where both teams struggled offensively, and the Gophers just had the better athletes to make the bigger plays. Credit that New Mexico punt returner. He made it a game. But, when we went to overtime, I was nervous, but I was also like, we are the better team. We should win this. And they did a good job. They got the 3 and out, forced the field goal, and then, in overtime on that 3rd and 7, I think it was, with a guy in his face, kind of off his back foot, Drake Lindsey throws a perfect strike to Jalen Smith, who lays out. It was beautiful. He laid out to catch the ball, and then he turned away from the ground as he caught it to try to get the ball away so it wouldn't hit the ground. I mean, Jalen Smith's going to be special. He was, when Minnesota played Ohio State and Oregon, Jalen Smith looked like he belonged athletically. And not everybody did, obviously, in those games, as Minnesota, got run a little bit in some of those games. But he looked like he truly belonged. So you got to give him a lot of credit. Maverick Baranowski, 17 tackles at linebacker. 17 tackles, including 13 solo, a sack, and a tackle for loss. I mean, Maverick Baranowski, man, he's been great. He's the heart and soul of the defense. He's only a junior, so he'll be coming back next year. And Anthony Smith announced he's coming back as well, even though he led the Big Ten this year with 12 and a half sacks on the season. 12 and a half. That's a sack for every game, almost. Play 13 games, ended up with 12 and a half sacks. So there were only a couple games where Anthony Smith didn't record a sack this year. He was, and even in those games, he was a terror. So big deal for Minnesota to keep him going into next year. I think that's exciting. Like I said, if Minnesota is going to do what they need to do next year, they need a good wide receiver in the portal. They need a little bit of offensive line help in the portal. The young guys I like. I think some of the young up-and-coming guys are going to be good, but they need a couple portal veterans, I think, to have a cohesive, really talented starting 5. And then it's going to be a matter of getting a couple defensive linemen, tackles specifically. They're pretty good at defensive end, but getting some defensive tackles because we graduate a lot there. And maybe a corner to be number 2 to John Nestor's number 1. Maybe a corner. Max says he won't be the leader in sacks for long. Caden Curry is coming. What's Caden Curry got on the year, Max? Because Anthony Smith is at 12, got 12 and a half in 13 games. Now, Caden Curry is going to play more games than 13, so he might get more. But you've played 13 games. We played 13 games. Yes. So in 13 games, Anthony Smith had more sacks. Not saying that matters or at all. Just saying Anthony Smith, as good as Caden Curry is, and Caden Curry might be the best defensive lineman in the whole conference, Anthony Smith was every bit his equal this year on the field. And Anthony Smith, 6'6", 285. The guy is, to be that big and that fast is crazy. It's crazy. I love the guy. So very excited about that. It was nice to see Darius Green get in there. He's had an injury-plagued career, and he played pretty well when he was in there. And yeah, it was an ugly game, but ultimately you got to win your clunkers. Minnesota did it. They get to 8-5. They didn't lose any home games. They finally, in their last outing, win a game away from home. So I think this is a very young team this year. I think if the Gophers can fill the right gaps in the portal, they could be ready to really compete next year. So I think Drake Lindsey could, with one more good receiver, I think Drake Lindsey could take a big step between his freshman and sophomore years at quarterback. So exciting stuff. Got to give it up for Jalen Smith. Good for the Gophers for doing what they could do, getting that bowl win and contributing to that undefeated Big Ten bowl record. And, it was too bad because Minnesota was supposed to play Iowa State in that game. That would have been a really good game too. But, you got to play who's in front of you, and Minnesota did it. And they got the job done. All right, next up in the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl, we had a game that I picked incorrectly. The Penn State Nittany Lions 22, the Clemson Tigers 10. Both teams end at 7-6. Look, I thought that Clemson was going to be the team pumped up to be here. Penn State had a million opt-outs. They have a new coaching staff. They have a lot of graduating seniors who aren't playing. Everything seemed right for Dabo, who's got who supposedly has that elite culture at Clemson to win that game, to come in, to be more physical, to show more desire, more hustle. But they weren't it. Penn State was the team hustling. Penn State was the team rallying to the ball on defense. Penn State was the team that wanted to be there. Full stop. Penn State wanted to be there, and they showed it. They almost, they had 400 yards about to just 236 for Clemson. They outpassed them on fewer attempts. And rushing 137 yards for Penn State to just 43. 43 for Clemson. And it wasn't, remember, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen did not play in this game. So it was Quinton Martin Jr. going for 100 yards with a long of 21. He's a freshman, so he'll be a guy to watch to see if he's maybe going to be one of the bell cows going forward for Penn State in that rushing offense. But it's good to see some other guys have some success. Grunkemeyer looked good, 23 for 34, 260 yards, 7.6 yards per attempt, 2 Ds, 0 picks for a QBR of whoops, I just hit the wrong button. For a QBR of nope, that's not right either. Doesn't matter. All right, for his QB rating was 151 for the game. Okay, QBR, there it is, 80, just under 80. So a very decent workman-like performance. I'll be interested to see what Penn State wants to do at quarterback. I think Grunkemeyer is a decent quarterback, but if they could get Rocco Becht or something from Iowa State in the portal, I think you obviously do that because he would be an upgrade over what Penn State has now with Grunkemeyer. Dabo Swinney's got some questions to answer, y'all. I mean, he said that if Clemson fires him defiantly, he's going to go somewhere else and keep winning. Well, if he doesn't start winning more at Clemson, there aren't going to be any other jobs that are as good as Clemson for him to go to. He's got to have if he's going to leave Clemson and get another job where he has a chance to win national titles, then he's got to bounce back this year, next year and the year after and win double-digit games and show that he can adjust to NIL and get a few guys in the portal who can actually play and contribute to the team. He needs to be doing that. Dabo absolutely does. Gotta give credit to Terry Smith, the interim for Penn State. He did a really good job. They didn't win all the games, but they won enough to get to a bowl game after starting 0-3. They ended up going 6-3 after starting 0-3. So that was a good finish by him. Or not 0-3, sorry. They ended up 6-3 in the conference after starting out 0-3 in conference. So that was really, really impressive for him to get the job done. He's going to stay on staff at Penn State. He seems really grateful. Talked about what Penn State has meant for him and his family. So, it's nice to see that he'll get to stay there under the new regime with Matt Campbell, a guy that the players love, obviously, and care about and want involved. So you like it when it works out. You like it when the new coach will keep on a guy or two that's really good for the program and that the players love. I think that's all really important. All right. So we will talk. We have, let's talk. We already talked a little bit about the bowls that are coming up tomorrow, but we will talk playoffs as well and the bowl games that are coming up in, I think I'll start playoffs, but we can also talk bowl games. If anyone wants to talk about anything in particular, please just type it in the chat. And we will discuss it. I'm open to almost all topics. There are some things I'm not going to address on the podcast. If you want to talk to me about politics, you can catch me offline. That's not what this is for. We don't do politics here, really, except for when we absolutely have to, the way they pertain to football. But we try to not do that here. Not my favorite thing to do. So these playoff games, we got a few bowl games tomorrow. We got 3 bowl games tomorrow in number 23 Iowa against 14 Vandy. Now, I picked Vandy in this game, but the closer I get to it, the more I think, is Kirk Ferentz going to embarrass Diego Pavia? Is Diego Pavia, who's been so dominant all year, is he going to be able to do it against this great Iowa defense? I don't know. I mean, I could see anything in this game. I could see Pavia being dominant and taking over and beating Iowa like 35-13 or something. And I could also see Iowa just shutting him down, turning him into a pocket passer, taking away his ability to run the ball and move it that way, and taking away, keep controlling the pocket so he can't scramble out and hit guys downfield and can't do all that playground stuff that he's so good at. I think against Iowa, they're going to have a real chance, and I won't be surprised. I picked Vandy to win that game, but the closer I get to it, the more I think that Iowa has a really good shot to win. The line's only Vandy by 5.5. And we talked about this one. The rest of these games we're talking about are either on Wednesday, December 31st or Thursday, January 1st. So we won't go too in deep because we talked about Iowa Vandy already in the last pod. Max says, I really hope Pavia sucks against Iowa. Do need some humbling. I mean, the humbling is coming, Max. He's not going to the NFL. So as soon as this college ride is over, Pavia realized his best option is probably Canadian Football League, potentially, at best, which those guys aren't exactly making a fortune compared. They're not making what NFL players are making or anywhere close. So I think Pavia's life's going to humble Pavia enough. He showed poor taste after the Heisman thing, and he was hating on Fernando Mendoza, and it was just a bad look for him, and he was hating on the Heisman voters, which I understand that more if you want to hate on the voters, but Fernando Mendoza deserved the Heisman. I mean, he did. I'm not saying Diego Pavia didn't deserve it, but Fernando Mendoza deserved the Heisman. He was a deserving winner. This wasn't like when Mark Ingram won, and we were all like, he's not even close to the best running back in the country, let alone the best player in the country. It's not like that. It's not a thing where the guy who won absolutely should not have won. So, yeah, I'm torn because I can't ever cheer for Iowa to win ever. Iowa and Wisconsin, I don't cheer for you to win ever against anybody. I just don't. Rivalry's too deep, hate you too much. So, not doing that. But I think Iowa's got a really good chance. I do. I think, Ferentz, this should have been a college football playoff team this year under Kirk Ferentz. They, out of their 4 losses, if they could have split those, they were all close. If they could have split those 4 losses, they could have made the playoff. So they were very close this year, and they were very close in those games. So I think Iowa is much better than 8-4. I think they're more like a 10-2 kind of game. And I'm excited to watch this because Vandy's better too. Vandy's a lot better than they were last year. They managed to go 10-2 in a tough SEC, and so like it's going to be a really great game. I think it's going to come down to the fact that Iowa's better at Iowa's running game and offensive line. I don't know if Vanderbilt's going to be ready to be hit for 4 quarters, and you got a dual threat quarterback, so you don't know if it's the quarterback running the ball or the running back. I don't know if Vandy's ready for that. So we're going to find out. I'm excited to watch that game. David in the chat. David, thanks for stopping by. Good to see you. He says, what's your take on the rainy weather for the Rose Bowl? Does it favor Indiana? Absolutely, it favors Indiana. Alabama can't run the ball at all. Jam Miller got hurt, and that was the end of their running game. Their offensive line is good at pass blocking, not good at running blocking. Not good at run blocking, and their running backs aren't any good. So the fact that Bama can't run the ball and Indiana can really run the ball, like extremely well, and is a balanced offense. They can run it, they can throw it. So I think that's the difference. The difference is that I said even before the rain, I thought the difference in this game was that Indiana can run the ball and Alabama can't. Now that it's going to rain, yeah, dude. I mean, give me Indiana. Give me the Hoosiers. Here's what I'll say about the Hoosiers. I picked against them just twice this year. I picked against them against Oregon. I picked against them against Ohio State, and I was wrong both times. I am done picking against Indiana. I'm done. I'm not going to pick against Indiana anymore for any reason. Like, they have proven enough to me at this point. Until they lose, I am picking Curt Cignetti to win. So we'll get to there. We'll get to that point. But, yeah, we have that. So that's the ReliaQuest Bowl, Iowa Vandy. I kind of think Texas is going to run Michigan off the field in the Citrus Bowl. I just don't, how focused is Michigan going to be? They have a new coach, guys are in the portal, all that kind of stuff. Whereas Texas has everybody coming back for next year, a lot of them. So I think Texas is probably the more motivated team. And Texas was probably the better team. I mean, they're both good teams. They both went 9-3, but I think Texas is probably the better team between the two of them. They certainly put up a better fight against Ohio State and stuff like that. So Arch Manning isn't amazing, but he's getting better. And Texas is fantastic talent-wise, the way they recruit. I think it's a close one, but I do think Texas finds a way to win that. Do we need to talk about 7-5 Nebraska against 10-2 number 15 Utah? I did a little bit in the last pod, but I'm going to be totally honest. And yeah, Max says rain favors running the ball. Bama can't run it. Exactly. Rain favors a team that can run the ball and make fewer mistakes. And I think that's Indiana and Fernando Mendoza. Remember, Mendoza has not thrown a bunch of picks this year. He has not. He threw the one bad pick against Oregon. But overall, Mendoza's thrown 33 TDs to just 6 interceptions, which is a fantastic ratio. That's what you want. Max says Nebraska is getting boat raced. Yeah, I think Utah can name their score. And Utah is going to be all pissed off now that their coach is leaving, like he took off and whatever. And now it's going to be like, it's like us against the world because the assistant coach of his is taking over. So it's definitely going to be an us against the world mentality for Utah. And Nebraska's so bad up front. We saw it all year. They have a terrible offensive line. And now Dylan Raiola is not even playing. He's in the portal. So you've got TJ Lateef, who is not it as a quarterback. And you can't run the ball really because your offensive line's so bad. So Nebraska, if they're going to have any chance in this game, they got to play defense. They got to score on defense and special teams, I think. Otherwise, Utah's going to win. That's my opinion on that one. Let's move right along and talk about some of these playoff games. So, first up, we have and we're going to stay on December 31st, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow, the last day of 2025. Wild times. And we'll talk about the number 10, 11-2 Miami Hurricanes playing against the number 2, 12-1 Ohio State Buckeyes. This is being played at the Cotton Bowl. It's the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, and the line is Ohio State by 9.5. That's a big spread for this game with teams that are as good defensively as both these teams are. Now, you look at Ohio State, the two best defenses they played all year were Texas. They put up 14 points. And Indiana, they put up 10. So against everybody else, Ohio State just dominated, did whatever they wanted to offensively, name their score, all that kind of stuff. But against the two best defenses they played, it didn't go very well offensively. Did not. Ohio State, the biggest surprise of the Big Ten title game for me was that Ohio State could not block Indiana. They couldn't block them. Not for 4 quarters. They couldn't block them. And Indiana never seemed to get gassed for whatever reason, even though I know they're not the deepest, rotation on the defensive line. But the offense had the ball enough that the defense could stay fresh. And, yeah, that Indiana defense was just fantastic. Miami's defense, Ruben Bain is one of the best defensive linemen in the country. He is a game wrecker. Miami has a lot of tough guys. That defensive front especially is really, really sick. We saw that against Texas A&M. They held them to 3 points. 3 points. Texas A&M won 11 games. And against Texas A&M won 11 games. And in their game against Miami, they couldn't do anything. They scored 3 points. So Miami, though, they couldn't do anything against Texas A&M's defense. And Ohio State's defense is better than Texas A&M's. So they only managed 10 points, and a lot of that came when they started running the ball in the second half. And that is, Ohio State has the best run defense in the country statistically. They played in the best conference, and they had the best run defense in the country. So I think it's going to be very difficult for Miami to get the run going. I mean, you look at the defensive line, McDonald, Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, et cetera. They've just been dominant for Ohio State. I think Miami's going to have a real hard time scoring in this game. Now, Ohio State could have some trouble scoring as well, because we've seen the weak link for Ohio State is that the offensive line isn't bad, but it's not great. It's not a great offensive line. It's not a vintage Buckeye offensive line, you know? And because of that, if you can stop the run a little bit and get pressure, you can make things hard. Julian Sayin, not a dual threat quarterback. He's a pocket passer. He needs his time to read the field. He didn't have time against Indiana. Ohio State kept trying to like do double moves and go downfield and get chunk plays against Indiana. And Sayin would get sacked or have to move off the pocket where he couldn't make the throws because Indiana got so much pressure. Now, all right, Max. Oh, Max has some comments in the chat. Let's get to those. Says Tigra Shabola isn't playing, so that improves the OL. One of Miami's starting DBs is out. That helps. We'll see how it goes. He says Day's calling plays, and he normally goes crazy with his calls. Just get the ball to 4th and 17. Let them do the work. And he says, person to keep an eye on, CJ Hicks, redshirted this year, but postseason games don't count, so he'll be playing a great edge rusher. Okay. So, yeah, we'll see if CJ Hicks can come in and be kind of a spoiler and come in and, you know, be a sneaky freshman who hasn't played yet, who can get off the ball and get some pressure on the quarterback on passing downs. That'll be something to watch. That'll be important. Yeah, and again, against Ohio State, when they played against Indiana and Texas, they went under 100 yards rushing. And those are the only games they went under 100 yards rushing this year. So I would watch that 100-yard rushing mark and see if Ohio State can get there by halftime or not. If they can't, then I think we got a game. If they can, then they're going to roll. Miami is the 15th best run blocking team in the country. So this Ohio State run defense will be challenged. And, you know, that Miami running back Fletcher, he was the difference in the playoff game against Texas A&M. He took over down the stretch and was able to get the job done and really, you know, lead that touchdown drive to go up 10-3 and put that game away. So that was an ugly offensive game, but Fletcher was fantastic. He's a really good running back. He's a power back between the tackles, physical kind of back. It's going to be up to Ohio State to stop him. The thing about Miami is that Carson Beck is their quarterback. So, yeah, Malachi Toney at receiver for Miami, fantastic. Awesome. Great player. Carson Beck makes a lot of mistakes. And I think, I just think that if, like, you look at on the year, he's got 26 touchdowns, which is great, but he's gotten 10 interceptions, and he's been sacked 11 times. And those interceptions seem to be clustered in the tougher games they played. They aren't like spread out. You know, they're against, what do you have against Texas A&M? I want to say he had a couple against them. But yeah, so it was, you know, it was just that kind of thing. Let's see. No, he didn't throw a tight end. Okay, he didn't throw any against Texas A&M. But there was a game before that where he threw like 3 or 4. I forget which game that was. And that's going to be what he has to avoid. Because if you give Ohio State short fields, if you give them extra possessions, they're going to crush you. They're going to absolutely crush you into powder. You cannot turn the ball over. You cannot give the Ohio State Buckeyes extra chances. Bo Jackson for Ohio State is a fantastic running back. As a freshman, we've seen him get better all year. If Ohio State can block well enough to get him in space, he will do damage. But, like, let's be real. This comes down to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Max Clare and maybe a little Brandon Inniss. And the question is Miami good enough up front and to harass Julian Sayin and make it hard for him to throw down the field? Indiana put a lot of pressure on Ohio State. They made it hard for them to throw downfield. Ohio State wants to throw the ball down the field. Julian Sayin has an unbelievable completion percentage on the year. It's like 78%. And those weren't a bunch of, it's not a bunch of bubble screens he's running. He's throwing the ball, downfield into coverage. Like, that's what the Buckeyes want to do. They want to open you up, throwing it downfield, and then run the ball once you loosen up your secondary. Once you back your safeties up a couple steps up because you're getting beat, that's when they're going to run the ball on you and make it really hard on you. So Max says, Bo Jackson needs open space, doesn't have the best vision or agility yet, but in open space, he's as good as it gets. Yeah, he's fast. He's fast. He's strong. He's a good running back. Can he improve? Sure. He's a true freshman, but he's a very good back. There's a reason why he's become the starter. And Max, thank you. Carson Beck threw 4 picks against Louisville, who's a very good defense. Really threw 5, but the ref gave him a terrible roughing call that took an interception off the board. Okay. Max says if it comes down to Brandon Inniss, Ohio State is in trouble. I mean, I don't think it's going to come down to Brandon Inniss. I think the main thing is going to be Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and tight end Max Clare. I think those guys need to make big plays. Max Clare needs to just catch the ball when it comes to him. If he does that, he'll be fine. And then Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, they got to find ways to scheme them out where they're not being double teamed all the time. And you need to get them, need to throw the ball and rushing, and running downs at times so that, Miami can't just try to bracket your best receivers and hope for the best because your quarterback's not a threat to run. I think that's what Miami's going to try to do if they can. I don't think they respect Julian Sayin as an athlete. So they're going to try to double or triple those other guys downfield and see if they can, make it really tough. I think this is going to be a really good game for like a half. I don't believe in Carson Beck. I don't believe in Carson Beck. I think he is mistake prone. I think he's hit and miss. I just don't think he's a special quarterback that I think Miami I think they would need a special quarterback because they've got Malachi Toney, but they aren't great at the rest of the receiver spots as much. I think they would need a special performance from the quarterback to have a chance in this game against Ohio State. So if Miami is gonna have a chance to win, Carson Beck's got to play his best ball of the whole year. If he does that, then they have a chance. If he doesn't do that, if he throws a couple picks, then Ohio State's going to cover that 9.5 point spread with ease. If Carson Beck turns it over. Carson Beck turns it over 2 or more times, this game's over and Ohio State wins it going away. Like, you cannot give this Ohio State team extra possessions. They are way too explosive. Way too explosive. And now you have Ryan Day calling the plays because Brian Hartline left. Well, if you listen to this pod, I believe Brian Hartline was a big part of the reason Ohio State lost to Indiana at the Big Ten title game. They had 2 times had 3rd and 1 deep in Indiana territory on like the 10-yard line. They came out with 3 points because they tried to pass the ball, both 3rd and 1s. And then on 4th down, one was a sneak where he fell down and one they kicked the field goal. Or is that the one he missed too? So they end up with 0 points for that. Yeah, I think he missed the field goal. So they end up with 0 points when they should have had 14. And all I can say is, Ryan Day, when it's 3rd and 1 or 2, run the ball. Run the ball. You have the team to do it. And if you don't get all the way there, you can sneak it on 4th down and get there. Run the ball. All right. Max says, what are your thoughts on college football pundit Ari Wasserman asking Jeremiah Smith 4 straight questions about why he didn't go to Miami out of high school? Ari Wasserman, I've said it before, I'll say it again, Max. He is the dumbest guy in major college football media. He is the dumbest. He knows the least about the game. All of his takes are rooted in the fact that he grew up in the 2000s. So whichever teams were good then, like USC, he thinks should be good forever. He's an idiot. I mean, he's really dumb. And I mean, Jeremiah Smith works all this time to make it to this major bowl game, to this Cotton Bowl, on his way to potentially win a second consecutive national title. And all Ari Wasserman can ask is, why didn't you go to school at Miami? Like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Like, we're not talking about the hypothetical college football sliding doors, what might have happened. We're talking about these real games, and we're celebrating the players who are in these games and watching these high-profile games. That should be the focus. Not, hey, why didn't you play for some other school? I mean, get out of here. Get the F out of here with that, Ari Wasserman. And don't listen to his podcast. Don't read what he tries to write, which he can barely do because, again, he's like a sentient monkey. He's so stupid. Ari Wasserman, just don't consume his output at all. I have him muted on Twitter, so I don't see him. I have no respect for him. I mean, to make it about Miami when Ohio State went 12-0 and barely lost the Big Ten title game and are ranked number 2 in the country, and you're going to ask the kid who goes to Ohio State why, over and over, why he didn't go to this other school? What does it have to do with this playoff? What does that have to do with anything, Ari? You know, get a life. Like, absolutely get a life and ask some real questions. But he can't because he doesn't know anything about ball. He's lazy. He doesn't do the research. Like, look up people's Pro Football Focus grades and stuff. Figure out how successful different players are in different situations. Ask about that. Don't be lazy and be like, oh, I'm gonna. This guy's from Florida. Let me ask him 8 million times until he admits he might have gone to Miami if they had been better when he was in high school. Like, what are you doing? You just don't want Ohio State to win. Flat out. Ari Watchman doesn't want Ohio State to win. And I'm going to laugh extra hard when Ohio State does, in fact, win. Because, yeah, Miami's not going to win this game. Unless Julian Sayin gets hurt or Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate get hurt at the same time. I don't think Miami's going to win this game. I don't think Miami, I mean, the spread is 9.5 with a total of 40 points. So Vegas is saying this is like 25-15. Miami's not going to score 15 points against this Buckeye defense. They barely managed 10 against Texas A&M. They're not as good as the Buckeyes are defensively. Absolutely not. So, yeah. Miami's not going to score 10 points in this game. I don't believe they are. I don't believe they're getting to 10. I think 10, I mean, all right, saying, 10 is the cap. I don't think they're getting past 10. So I'm giving them 1 touchdown and 1 field goal, and that's it. I think this Buckeye defense is too good. I think Carson Beck is too mistake prone. I think Malachi Toney is they're too dependent on him getting it done, and the other receivers are not as good. So yeah, I am really bullish on this Buckeye squad. I think they're fantastic. I think that they, I told you I'm not picking against Indiana again, so I won't pick the Buckeyes to win the national title, but I'm going to pick them to win every game except for against Indiana because they beat Indiana. They showed me they could do it. Or sorry, Indiana beat Ohio State. Excuse me. They showed me they could do it. So I'm not picking against Indiana again in the postseason. I'm just not making that mistake. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm not doing it. But Ohio State after Indiana, I think is a very, very close second for the best team in the country. And I think Ohio State has a really good chance to win a national title. And I think they're going to flex on Miami a little bit. I think they're going to come out, run up tempo. Oh, by the way, let's talk about something that bothers me. When announcers say they're going to go tempo here, tempo just means speed. So saying they're going to go tempo, you wouldn't say I'm going to go speed. You say you're either up tempo at a faster tempo or a slower tempo. But just saying tempo doesn't mean fast. Tempo is not a synonym for fast. College football announcers. So when you say that a team's wants to go fast, you say they're going to go up tempo. They're going to go with a fast tempo. Say something like that. Don't say they're going tempo. You sound like a moron. Sorry, that bothers me. That has bothered me a lot. Max says Arvell Reese has been aggressive as of recently, but I think that changes. He's bound to have a breakout, or hasn't been aggressive as of recently, but I think that changes. He's bound to have a breakout game on the national stage. Oh yeah, Arvell Reese is fantastic, and Miami's going to run the ball. Miami's going to try to run the ball, whether it works or not. They're going to run the ball 30 times at least. So Arvell Reese is going to have his chances to make plays, especially in the running game, and maybe blitzing on passing downs. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think Arvell Reese is poised. Also, Caleb Downs, man. I think Caleb Downs is due. They try to throw away from them as much as they can, but I don't think that that's going to be effective. I think Miami's going to have to challenge him at times because I think the other guys are really good too. And I think we're really overdue for a big Caleb Downs game. Really overdue for a big Caleb Downs game. So that's going to be interesting. I think I have, and you can tell me scores in the chat if you guys have predictions. I've got the Ohio State Buckeyes 27. The Miami Hurricanes 10. Yeah. I think Ohio State scores on defense as well as offense. I think they score one on offense. Max in the chat says Ohio State 24-6 for 6 to Miami. Yeah, I could see that. Like I said, I just said 27-10. I don't think I said it before. I don't think Miami scores more than 10 points in this game. I do think Carson Beck will cough it up a couple times, and I think Ohio State will make them pay for those turnovers. Yes, the Miami defensive front is fantastic. Yes, the defense overall is very good, and the running game is good. But I don't see how you're going to run the ball against these Buckeyes. You've been able to run the ball on them in 2 years. It's been since 2023 that anyone can run the ball on Ohio State. So I don't think that changes now. I think that the Buckeyes take this one home. But please, Max put his score in the chat. If you're in the chat, let me know what you guys think is going to happen in any of these games or anything else you want to discuss. All right, next up, these last 2 playoff games are, so that was the Cotton Bowl, and the other 2 playoff games are being played on, the other 2 Big Ten playoff games, are being played on Thursday, January 1st, New Year's Day. We have the 12-1, number 5 ranked Oregon Ducks taking on the number 4 ranked Texas Tech. I almost said Pirates in honor of Mike Leach. The Red Raiders. It's piratey. It's piratey. Red Raiders. But I almost straight up said Pirates because I was thinking of Mike Leach when he was there, so long ago. Mike Leach obviously sadly died the last couple of years, he died far too young, which is always sad. But this is a 12 p.m. game on ESPN. The line is Oregon by just 2.5. When I look at this game, I think this is the best game I think this is going to be the best game of the 3. Like, I truly do. Texas Tech gets the 3rd and long and 3rd and medium a lot. Like, they're not the most efficient team on 1st and 2nd down. They also have Baron Morton at quarterback, who I've talked about before, is very up and down. He can be good at times. He can be bad at times. He can do it all in the same game, being really good and really bad. So he's kind of a wild card for me. Like, if he's on, he's been hit and miss. If he's on his game, he can be really dangerous. But a lot of the games Texas Tech won, they should have won by more. And it came down to Baron Morton was not able to hit guys when they were open to break the game open. So I'm really watching to see if Baron Morton, how he plays. Does he have time to throw? Can Texas Tech's receivers get any separation against this elite Oregon secondary? Can they do any of those things? But yeah, 3rd and long. Pay attention. If Texas Tech's going to win that game, they need to convert higher percentage of 3rd downs. So if Oregon constantly has Texas Tech in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11, that's not going to be good for the Red Raiders. That's gonna bode well for Oregon. Oregon on offense, I think that when they have 3rd and long, I think they can go get it. I think Dante Moore is amazing, and the Oregon wide receivers, Evan Stewart, obviously still out for the year, but DeCorian Moore and those other guys are healthy now. So I just think when I look at the 2 teams, Texas Tech is, yes, that defensive front is fantastic. I mean, they're really good. This is going to be a low-scoring game. I believe. I think this is going to be really hard. Oregon normally just runs over people. They line up. They have the best offensive line. I know Iowa won the Joe Moore Award, but Oregon was head-to-head was the best offensive line in the country. So, Oregon, I think normally they line up. They're going to smash into you, run the ball, and go play action off of that. I don't think Oregon's going to be able to run the ball against Texas Tech. I don't. But I don't think Texas Tech's going to be able to run the ball against Oregon either. So it comes down to the back 7 of both defenses and the opposing quarterback and wide receivers. And I trust Dante Moore and DeCorian Moore and that Oregon quarterback and receivers more than Baron Morton and those Texas Tech receivers. Full stop. I said full stop a lot in this pod. I'll work on that. I don't know why I got that in my head. I think because I'm pumped up, guys. I'm pumped up about the playoffs. But yeah, I just think it's going to be hard for Texas Tech. Texas Tech is going to have to win the turnover battle, and they're going to have to score off of turnovers on a short field. That is absolutely going to have to happen if they're going to have a chance to win this game. I really believe that at all. Max says Jacob Rodriguez is listed as probable, so he's at least a little bit hurt. That's a huge blow for Texas Tech. Yeah, that's interesting. that he's going to be limited. That he's going to be limited because he is a really good, he is a really good player. He's all over the place for that defense, just making plays. So if he's limited and can't be explosive, then that might give, if he can't be his normal explosive self, that might give Ohio State that extra split second they need to open up run holes, to open up holes in the running game for Bo Jackson and to get him going a little bit. So I think, because if Ohio State can run the ball, this game's going to be over by halftime. Or sorry, if Oregon, not Ohio State. If Oregon can run the ball, this game's going to be over by halftime. It is. Because Texas Tech is just not a great come-from-behind team. Baron Morton is not, I think Baron Morton's probably the worst quarterback, or the least, I shouldn't say worst. He made the playoff. The least talented quarterback left in this playoff. So I just think with Dante Moore might be the number 1 overall pick in next year's NFL draft. And you have that paired with the running game, paired with the receivers, paired with an awesome defense. So it'll be close for a while. I think this Texas Tech front is going to make it hard for Oregon to move the ball early in the game. But I think once they start shifting the pocket a little bit, get Dante Moore out in space where he can make plays, either tuck and run or find guys, downfield, past the structure of the initial play. Like, I think that kind of stuff could really play well for Oregon in this one. And I think that's how they're going to get it done. So I think this is low scoring. I don't anticipate this being any kind of barn burner. I think points are going to be at an absolute premium. The over under is 51.5. So Vegas, is saying this is going to be something like 26-24, 27-25, I guess. 27-25, Oregon. I think it's going to be a great game. I do think it's going to come down to the end, but I think Oregon's better than people think they are. I've got Oregon winning this game. Got the Oregon Ducks 27, the Texas Tech Red Raiders 20. I think Oregon's wins. I think they cover that 2.5-point spread. Max in the chat says, I got Oregon 17-10. Yeah, Max, for sure. I think the Ducks win as well. That's going to be a really fun game to watch. I'm super excited. I'm excited to watch football, the next few days here. Oh, you know what? I totally forgot. We had a couple Big Ten games. We'll talk about Indiana. We'll talk about Indiana and Alabama first, and then we'll come back for those two. I know I skipped a couple bowl games, just mentioning them. The Liberty Mutual Music City Bowl between Illinois and Tennessee, and then the Valero Alamo Bowl with USC and TCU. Those are both going to be really interesting games. They both have 1-score spreads. So we'll talk a little bit more about them. But right now, let's talk about Alabama and Indiana. This is a 4 p.m. game on ESPN. It's on Thursday the 1st. 3 p.m. game Central Time. I'm on Eastern now. So my clock's all switched to Eastern. I have to remind myself that Central Time is God's time. That's the time we list things in. So yeah, Oregon, Texas was at 11. And then Alabama, Indiana is at 3. Alabama is ranked number 9th in the country. They are 11-3 on the year. And Indiana is number 1 in the country, 13-0. The spread is IU by 7. Man, if you had told me 2 years ago, if you told somebody before Nick Saban retired that Alabama would sneak into the playoff and be an underdog to Indiana by a touchdown, you would have gotten laughed off the field. And that's why we love college football, because teams can rise from the ashes and do awesome stuff, and that we don't expect. Indiana, it's been fantastic all year. They won the Big Ten title. They beat league overlord Ohio State in it 13-10, and just absolutely got the job done. I think a big thing in this game is that Ryan Day is calling plays now. With Brian Hartline off to South Florida, Ryan Day is calling the plays. And I think that's a big advantage for Ohio State. Brian Hartline, like I said, especially in tight second half situations, I didn't like Brian Hartline's play calling. I don't think he was putting them in the best position to succeed. I think he's the biggest, credit to Indiana. Indiana's a great team. They deserve to win that Big Ten title. But if you have a different offensive coordinator, there's a chance that Ohio State wins that game. I don't, if it's 3rd and 1, I don't think Ryan Day is going to get cute and try to throw the ball deep in opponent territory. If he's got 3rd and 1 on the 10, he's going to run the ball. So I just don't think he's going to make those mistakes the way Hartline did. Because of that. And yeah, I see that. So that's what I think about the Ohio State situation. I think with him calling plays, it's going to be hard for Miami. And then let's move on and talk Rose Bowl. Like I said, we've got this 4 p.m. or 3 p.m., excuse me, ESPN on the 1st. That's on Wednesday. Line Indiana by 7. Alabama has 2 things they're not good at. They're good at everything else. They throw the ball. They play defense. They make a lot of things happen. Great, good receivers, great quarterback, all that kind of stuff. Alabama cannot run the ball. They cannot run the ball. Ever since Jam Miller got hurt, their offensive line isn't good enough. They cannot run the ball. And on the flip side, Alabama can't rush the passer. They're good at disguising coverages, but in general, they can't get home with 4 pass rushers. They have to blitz and to get there. And if they blitz, that gives you Fernando Mendoza a chance to make reads and throw down the field against single coverage, if you're blitzing. So Alabama's kind of between a rock and a hard place here, because if you blitz, you might get to Mendoza, but whom are you leaving open? And if you don't blitz, Fernando Mendoza might sit back there and be able to drink a cup of coffee waiting for his receivers to get open. And it's not going to matter how well your DBs play, because Fernando is going to have all day to throw it to him. So I think that's those are the biggest factors in this game. I think Alabama's best chance is to create some turnovers early, capitalize on those opportunities, get a lead, and make Indiana play from behind, which is something they're not used to doing. Because I just look at, even without Stephen Daly, this Indiana defense is so incredible with Aiden Fisher and Mikhail Kamara and D'Angelo Pons, at various on the linebacker, D-line, and cornerback, respectively. I mean, D'Angelo Pons other than a couple plays, he shut down Jeremiah Smith in the Big Ten title game. All 5'9" of D'Angelo Pons playing 6'3" Jeremiah Smith, and D'Angelo Pons got the better of him more often than not. It was a clinic. So he might be the best corner in the whole country. I haven't seen anybody that I think's any better than D'Angelo Pons is. So, I think that's important. And the other thing is, Indiana can run the ball and Alabama can't. And the fact that Indiana has a balanced offense, I look at Alabama not being able to run the ball, and I just think that on long yardage situations, 2nd and long, 3rd and long, Indiana's going to come for you. They're going to get pressure with their front 4, and they're going to blitz when they feel like they have to, and they're going to make it really, really hard on opposing teams. And, they spread it out. It's not always the same guys doing the damage. It's Mikhail Kamara only had 1 sack this year, and he's fantastic. But they were double teaming him all year, and they were allowing it to open up for guys like Stephen Bailey, who had 5.5 this year, or Tucker, who had 5.5 sacks this year, or Wyatt, who had 2.5. And it's not Landino, who had 5, Hardy, who had 8. So they blitz. They get Jones, who had 7. They blitz to get pressure. Indiana does, and they will blitz and try to get to your quarterback and try to speed him up and make him make a decision. So, can Ty Simpson, without a running game, with Indiana knowing they have to throw the ball, knowing Alabama has to throw the ball to make any hay, can Alabama, find a way to get home and make it hard on Fernando Mendoza? Because I think they're going to make it hard on Ty Simpson. I think they're going to blitz him all day. I don't think they're going to respect the Alabama running game at all. I think they're going to play a light box and say, Ty Simpson, we know it's on you, and we're going to do everything we can to make your life hard. Everything we can to make your life difficult. And the thing about Indiana is, they're so good. Their linebackers are so good in their run fits, and their defensive linemen do a good job of taking up gaps. So I don't think Alabama, they can't run the ball against normal teams. They're not gonna be able to run the ball against this Indiana front, not at all. So yeah, I do think there'll be some explosive plays. I think Alabama will score, here and score a few times. I don't think this is a total blowout or anything. I think this is a really good team. Alabama has recruited at an insanely high level and has fantastic athletes, but Indiana's got really good athletes too. And I just look at it and I say, if you're talking about the Alabama Crimson Tide, their pass catchers are kind of inconsistent. And you need look no further than Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams, he had 636 yards on the year, 4 touchdowns, but he's only had a couple 100-yard games since he had that 100-yard game against Georgia that kind of introduced him to the world a couple years ago. Or was it last year? Regardless, he has not been as efficient and as dominant like he was, like he looked like he could be. So you're talking about, the most dominant receiver is Jeremy Bernard, who's very good. He's a very good player, had over 800 yards receiving this year, 7 touchdowns. But you look at Indiana, man, and just the way they light up the scoreboard and the way Signetti just goes for the jugular. And that's why, receiving, they're so deep. Omar Cooper had 800 yards. Elijah Surratt had 687 yards. Charlie Becker had 515. EJ Williams had 416. And the tight end, Nowakowski, had 316. So they, Mendoza spread the ball around. Elijah Surratt is the key to the offense because nobody can guard him. Nobody can cover him at all. There's no covering him. But remember, they didn't have Omar Cooper against Ohio State. They were depending on Charlie Becker and Elijah Surratt primarily. So now with Omar Cooper back, Charlie Becker goes back to being the number 3 wide receiver, number 3 option out there. EJ Williams out, obviously is also an option. I just think it's crazy to say this, but I just think the Hoosiers are deeper with playmakers at receiver than Alabama is. I think Elijah Surratt after Jeremiah Smith is the best receiver in America. With all apologies to Mekhi Lemon, but Elijah Surratt is incredible. He is a special player. The dude can, he practically walks on water. And the thing is, he gets open and catches the ball, but even when he's not open, he still catches the ball. Like, he absolutely still catches the ball, even with the defenders in his face. He will go up and get that ball. And there are going to be times when Fernando Mendoza has pressure on him against Alabama, and he's got to throw it up and just trust Elijah Surratt to go make that play. And I think Surratt will, because he's shown that he can over the years. So, I think like Roman Hemby, Kalon Black both had good years running the ball. Like I said, I think that's the difference. I think that Indiana is able to get the running game going a little bit. I think we see Hemby's got good speed. He might get the bulk of the carries. And Kalon Black, will spell him. But if they can run the ball a little bit, if Alabama can't stop the run cold, that's what Alabama needs to do. They need to force a couple turnovers, and they need to make the way Alabama's one-dimensional, all they can do is throw. They need to make Indiana into a team that can only throw. Because if Indiana can run and throw, it's going to be a long day for the Crimson Tide. They need to close up in the box, dare Indiana to make plays downfield, and hope your DBs are good enough to make those plays when the ball comes flying 40 yards in the air. I think that's Alabama's best chance, and they get some turnovers. So it could happen. Alabama could absolutely win this game. But again, I'm not picking that to happen. I'm not picking against these Hoosiers again. Not doing it. They've been too good. They've conquered too many. Mountains. I just think that this Hoosier team is a team of destiny, and they look like they're poised to go win a national title. I think it's gonna be them and Ohio State in a rematch, and it'll be anybody's guess who wins that game. But I'm not picking against Indiana again. I'm not picking against them again. They've been too great, and I do have an affinity for them, of course. So yeah, I have got in this game, I think it's lower scoring, maybe than Vegas thinks it is. Yeah, I think it's lower scoring than Vegas thinks it is. I think, like I said, I think it's like 27-20 Indiana, something like that. And if they do that and advance and beat Alabama, oh man, the SEC. Oh, the SEC chanters are going to be so upset. If Alabama, if the league, if the flag holder of the league the 800-pound gorilla in the room, if Alabama gets humbled by Indiana, we truly live in a new world that's never coming back. Max makes a good point in the chat, says, DeBoer has been here before. Signetti really hasn't. That might play deep into the game if Alabama can hang in it. Yeah, I guess. But Sig has been really good in big games for the most part. But yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point that Signetti, Indiana, other than Ohio State, Indiana and Oregon, Indiana didn't really get challenged this year. Well, I guess Penn State too. So they got challenged a few times, and they rose to the occasion every time, going 13-0. Max says it's going to be 24-21 Hoosiers. Bama has a chance to win and doesn't capitalize. Yeah, I could see that. I could see Ty Simpson with a chance to go win the game and then just throwing a pick or something. Yeah, I could see that. Ty Simpson's very good, but like I said, I don't think he's going to have much time to throw. The biggest, even with Stephen Daly gone, the biggest surprise of the Big Ten title game for me, again, I've said it before, is that Ohio State could not block Indiana at all. They couldn't block their defensive line, which shocked me. But they could not block them at all. That's how good the Indiana defensive front is. It's fantastic. So yeah, I think IU wins. I think it's close. I think you've got I think Paul Feinbaum's head will explode when Alabama loses to Indiana, and the only team left for the SEC in the playoff is the winner of, Georgia and Ole Miss. I think it's gonna hit hard. It's gonna hit hard for him. I do believe that that's gonna happen. All right, so that's what I think is gonna happen in the Rose Bowl. Let's talk about a couple of these bowl games I skipped that are on Tuesday, December 30th. We have at 5:30 p.m. The Tennessee Volunteers at 8-4 playing the also 8-4 Illinois Illini in the Music City Bowl. The line is Tennessee by 3. Over under 61.5. So they've got something like 32-29 Volunteers. Now, the Music City Bowl, the problem with it is that it's in Tennessee. That's the problem for Illinois fans. The Music City Bowl is in Tennessee. You're playing Tennessee. So it's going to feel a little bit like a home game for the Volunteers, I think. I think Illinois may travel well, but just, Tennessee fans can all drive there. And that just makes it a lot easier to get to a game. So I do think Tennessee is going to have the crowd advantage. But I think Illinois has the quarterback advantage. It's Luke Altmaier has been fantastic all year. And Joey Aguilar is a decent player, but he's not Luke Altmaier. He's not the same kind of athlete. I don't think he has the same kind of arm. I think he's kind of he's more of a game manager type, control the ball, pocket passer type. Joey Aguilar is. I just don't see him. He doesn't measure up as well as Illinois' quarterback, Luke Altmaier, who can make plays in space, who can get outside, who can keep his eyes up, throw the ball downfield, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be a really close game. But I just, Tennessee's going to be down 4 defensive starters and the SEC's leading receiver with Chris Brazzell, who had 1,017 yards receiving and 9 TDs. He's not playing in this game. Cornerback Jermod McCoy didn't play this season. Colton Hood, Joshua Josephs, Arian Carter are all sitting out while looking toward the draft. So there's going to be a lot of guys out for Tennessee, but Illinois got some opt-outs as well. Outside linebacker Gabe Yakis, who's, led the Big Ten Conference regular season in sacks with 11, is not playing. And left tackle J.C. Davis praying for the NFL draft. And Matthew Bailey, defensive back, is hurt. So, the Vols, look, they're going to try to score a ton of points. They're going to try to outscore you. They put up 482 yards a game, top 400 yards in every game except for the regular season finale against Vandy, which is really impressive. And Joey Aguilar, averaged 275 yards passing every game, which is really impressive. A victory would give Illinois its most wins over a 2-year period ever at 19, because they'd be 9-4 this year, and they were 10-3 last year. So that's really impressive. Look, I think this can be high scoring. I don't think the defenses are going to be able to do a lot here necessarily. Either defense to slow down the other one. I think having Gabe Yakist out for Illinois obviously hurts a lot. Tennessee's opt-outs hurt as well. But Bielema's a gritty coach. I think this comes down to the last possession. And I think if it's Illinois needs to score, they're going to score. I think if Tennessee needs to score, Illinois is going to force a turnover. I think that's going to be the game. So I do think this is going to be a really good one. So I've got this one as the Illinois Illini 30, the Tennessee Volunteers 27. Max said, did you see that normally the SEC team gets to use Vandy's facilities and the Big Ten team has to use Montgomery Bell Academy's facilities for the Music City Bowl? That's not fair at all. No, that doesn't sound fair. That one of them gets a legit college facilities and the other one has to go to some place I've never heard of. That doesn't seem fair. But this year Tennessee refused to use Vandy's facilities, so it's flipped. Well, it seems like a stupid move on Tennessee's part, but any edge you can get, Brett Bielema will find it. I do believe that. So yeah, I think it's a really close game. Could go either way. I think Illinois pulls it out. And if they do, if Indiana, if Oregon and Indiana and Ohio State and Illinois all win, I mean, it's gonna be pandemonium for the Big Ten. And the last bowl we didn't talk about that much, and I'm not going to go too in deep here. Number 16, 9-3 USC against 8-4 TCU. Now, it's a thing where TCU's starting quarterback is opting out. Josh Hoover. He opted to enter the transfer portal, which you're doing awesome, man. You're at TCU. You have an awesome job. You're doing great. You're putting up video game numbers, threw for 3,500 plus yards the last 2 years. I think it's a mistake to go find another school. I think if you're not going pro, you should be staying at TCU. But he's not. He's not going to be there. So senior Ken Seals gets the start. Who he did a pretty good job when he was at Vanderbilt. But, it's, and they got other guys who aren't opting out. Their star receiver, Eric McAllister, is playing, which is great. But USC's got a lot of guys playing. Jaden Mayava's playing. He's coming back next year. He passed for 3,400 yards, 23 touchdowns this season. And I just, it's a thing where I don't think a backup quarterback's going to beat USC in a bowl game. He could be pretty good, but I think once USC figures out what he's doing and what he wants to do as a backup, what he's comfortable with, what he's not comfortable with, they're going to attack. They're going to attack him and make him prove he can do it, stop the run, make this backup quarterback prove he can do it. And I don't know Ken Seals enough about Ken Seals, but I don't based on his resume, I don't see him as a guy who's going to come in and do like a fantastic job or anything. It helps to have McAllister playing. Helps them a lot. So that's really good for TCU. But and I believe Makai Lemon is opting out for USC, but USC also just kind of is a receiver factory. So when guys, it's like kind of like Ohio State when like guys when USC has receivers hurt, I'm always like, well, they're going to have more receivers. They always do. They always have a guy they can pick up off the bench who's a 4 or 5 star who can come in and just be ridiculous. They usually have that. So that's interesting as far as that goes. But yeah, I think USC is going to pull it out. I mean, I know I'm being bullish on the Big Ten. I know the Big Ten will eventually lose probably one of these games, but I think there's a legitimate reasons to pick the Big Ten to win all of these games. Like I said, the only game I didn't pick the Big Ten in out of these that I talked about today is Iowa. I picked Vandy because Diego Pavia has been so amazing. But don't be surprised if Iowa makes life hard for Diego Pavia and we see, them pull that off too. So I've got Iowa losing, but everybody else winning for the Big Ten. It'll be interesting to see if that's correct or what happens. But I'm super, super pumped about this. I mean, we've got great, great games coming up. We got a couple games today, even, in Tennessee, Illinois, and USC TCU. But of course, then New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, we get all the big playoff games. And it's the most wonderful time of the year. I hope you all had a great Christmas. I had an awesome Christmas. And I'm really pumped, to go out and do this. It is cold as hell outside, but that's okay. That's what you want this time of year, as long as you can stay in warm and warm up your belly and eat some good food and feel good about the fact that you're living inside, and grateful for that. I'm grateful to have, a roof. I'm actually out of town right now from where I normally am, but I'm grateful to have a roof over my head and all that kind of stuff. I know you all are too. And I appreciate you hanging out with me for this. Let's see. We got Max in the chat says, you have OSU beating Miami. So how do you think the Ole Miss Georgia winner fares against the Buckeyes in Arizona? Long travel for both teams. Another big SEC battle brewing. Ohio State versus Georgia, I think, is a really good game. Gunnar Stockton is not amazing, but he's gotten a lot better, and that Georgia defense is really humming. And Georgia's got good, they got great speed. They have, they have a lot of good things. They stack top 3 recruiting classes on top of top 3 recruiting classes. If it's Ole Miss, I think Ohio State wins it going away. I don't think Ole Miss has the kind of defense that can compete with the Buckeyes at all. But if it's Georgia, I think it's close. I think it comes down to turnovers and who executes when they get their red zone opportunities, because I think Ohio State Georgia would be a low scoring game, is my prediction. But I think, I think the Buckeyes win. I think the Buckeyes win, whether it's Ole Miss or Georgia. The only team that I think can beat Ohio State is Ohio State or Indiana. The 2 teams. Ohio State can beat themselves, and Indiana can beat them. And that's it. I don't think anybody else can beat Ohio State if Ohio State brings their A game. I just don't. Rock on. All right. Oh, wow. Solo pod, been almost 2 hours. Well, thank you, everybody, for rocking with me. This has been a lot of fun. I can't believe, I don't know where the time's gone. But any last comments anybody wants to get in? And then I think I'm going to get out of here. I hope you all have a great time watching ball today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. I hope none of you are working. Hope you're still enjoying your holidays and that you're able to do, really, really enjoy this, because after this, we go a long time without football. I mean, I know we still have the playoffs and whatever, but like your team, like everyone gave me a hard time for celebrating the Gopher win. And I was just like, we only get 12 regular seasons of games a year. And with the postseason, you get 13 or maybe 14 or, but like, that's it. This isn't basketball. You don't have 35 games. Like, every game matters. And I'm going to celebrate every win, whether it was ugly or not. And if you can't celebrate wins when you win, then maybe college football isn't for you, because it's going to be tough. There's a lot of parity. There's going to be losses. And like, the losses hurt so badly that if you can't enjoy the wins, then you're just not having any fun. So don't let, if you're in a bowl and not the playoff, don't let anyone tell you you can't celebrate your team winning a bowl game. It's very cool to win a bowl game and the regular, end the season with a win and give yourself a little boost of momentum and positivity going to the offseason. That's a fantastic thing. And don't let anyone take that away from you. Don't let the media tell you how to enjoy this playoff. I see Kirk Herbstreit's out there saying, oh, we got to get rid of bowl games. Get rid of bowl games. Get out of here, Kirk. You don't understand our sport anymore. You've been in an ivory tower at ESPN too long, and you don't understand what these bowl teams mean to the players and the fans and everything, or how much we love bowl season when we get to watch bowl games of teams we probably didn't get to watch during the year, but they're on and it's break and you're not, you're maybe not working, and you get a chance to watch teams play that you haven't seen all year. I mean, that's exciting. That's so exciting to do. So enjoy bowl season, enjoy the playoff games too, but enjoy bowl season, and don't let anyone make you apologize for enjoying your team and celebrating a victory. Don't let anyone, I won't apologize for it. I am determined, because there were times when I used to get down on myself again after wins, and I just be like, what am I doing? We won the game. I can get down after losses, but I'm not going to feel down in the dumps after a win unless your quarterback gets knocked out for the season with an injury or something like that, right? Generally, after a win, I'm going to be happy about it and find a way to celebrate. I think that's important because, again, these games are sacred. We only get a handful of them all year. All right, everybody. Okay. Biff saying he doesn't even care about winning. Not great. Biff Poggi said he didn't care about winning the bowl game. Michigan's going to get run off the field, aren't they? I mean, Michigan's going to really struggle against Texas, aren't they? That's the other one I picked as a loss for the Big Ten is I don't think Michigan's going to beat Texas. If they do, it'll be funny, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I've got a couple Big Ten losses, but for the most part, I think the Big Ten is going to take care of business in this postseason. I just think Michigan loses to Texas and Nebraska is not going to beat Utah. And like I said, the Iowa Vandy thing's a toss up, but everybody else I feel really good about. I'm really excited to see what they do. Max, Biff Poggi said it's not about winning. It's about how the players handle the adversity. Okay, dude, whatever. I mean, he's an interim coach. He can say whatever he wants. Maybe he thinks that's what the locker room needs to hear so they don't play so tight in their, audition for their new coach. Kyle Whittingham, because that's what it is. Now that they have a new coach, this bowl game is an audition. Kyle Whittingham will be there. And if you want to be on the Michigan roster next year, you better show Kyle Whittingham that you want to play ball, because he will just replace you. I am confident of that. If he finds guys, Kyle Whittingham is a culture guy. He wants guys that are all in, dedicated, who want to play balls out all the time. And if you're not that guy and he shows up on the field, he's going to say, see you later. Have a nice life. And you're not going to be on the team anymore. So it's going to be really interesting to see, the way Michigan plays for their new coach. Penn State just played hard for their new coach, showing Matt Campbell the guys that want to be on the team next year. So all that stuff. All right. Thank you so much for rocking with me on this nearly 2-hour long solo podcast. I didn't intend to go this long, but I just kind of got going and I had a really good time. And I hope you did too. And I will be back. So John gets back New Year's Eve. I think we're going to do a pod on the 2nd, or maybe we'll even go live on New Year's Day after if he's got the energy for it. But I don't know if he will. He's going to be pretty wrecked. Tour is really hard on him, I know. So, and he's very tired and kind of worn down. So we'll get John for a pod probably by January 2nd at the latest, January 2nd or 3rd at the latest, to recap everything that happens in these playoff games. And I might go live. I might even go live tomorrow morning again before, just to talk about some of these matchups a little more in depth or whatever. We'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling. But everyone, I hope you're having happy holidays. I hope you had a Merry Christmas. I wish you all the best, all awesome holidays. And I hope you're with your loved ones having a great time, and that was awesome. And now we got more football to watch, and that's beautiful too. So I hope you're all loving life the way I'm loving life right now. And I will absolutely see you guys in the next one. I will either go live early on January 1st, or else John and I will do something January 2nd. I'm going to see what his schedule's like, and then I'll decide. I'll put it out on social media the next time. And I'll put the live stream up on the YouTube channel, like in advance, letting you know when we're going to go live. All right, cool. All right, thanks, everybody. Thank you for listening to the pod. If you made it 2 hours with me on a solo postseason pod, you are my hero, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful bowl and playoff games, and we'll talk to you in the next couple of days.